I was dead sure the stars had started laughing at me. Not twinkling, laughing, in that cruel way the universe reserves for people who really should have double-checked the fuel lines. My shuttle pitched nose first through the void, alarms shrieking in a chorus of electronic despair. Every red light on the console had come to life, a dazzling carnival of failure, and all I could think to mutter was, "Great." I always wanted to die accompanied by a disco ball. The ship didn't answer, unless you count the violent lurch that sent me slamming against the harness straps hard enough to bruise my ribs. Gravity was a confused mess, alternating between wanting to flatten me into the chair or float me like a balloon. A voice, my navigation AI, smug as always, crackled over the static, warning. Trajectory deviation exceeds acceptable limits. Recommended solution, do not crash. Wow, I coughed, trying to wrestle the controls. Thanks, genius. Next time, tell me not to drown while I'm mid-ocean. Stars bled into streaks. I had no idea where I was, just a smear of cosmic light dragging me downward toward the surface of a planet I didn't recognize. One moment, I was skirting the edge of a quiet trade route, the next I was locked into an unstoppable dive, as though some invisible hand had reached out and yanked me down. My instincts screamed danger. My stomach screamed too, in the language of half-digested ration bars. The hull rattled like a tin can full of angry marbles. Heat rolled against the viewport as the atmosphere caught me, fire licking the shuttle's skin. Every part of me wanted to panic, but instead I found myself blurting, "At least if anyone recovers the wreckage, they'll see I was wearing my seatbelt." The clouds tore open beneath me, revealing an alien world shrouded in dark forests and jagged mountains. Shadows sprawled across the terrain in unnatural patterns, like claws reaching for the sky. Lightning forked without thunder, as if sound itself had fled this place. My hands shook as I yanked the emergency lever. Panels screamed, the landing thrusters coughed like asthmatic dogs, and somehow, impossibly, the shuttle didn't completely disintegrate. It only mostly did. The impact rattled every bone in my body. The ship groaned, shuddered, and finally collapsed into silence, a broken carcass half buried in soil that looked black even under the flames. Smoke curled up in lazy spirals, and the only sound left was my own labored breathing. I unclipped myself, staggered forward, and booted the hatch until it gave way. The alien air rushed in, sharp and metallic, stinging my lungs. Outside, the world was stranger still. Trees twisted upward, their bark shimmering like metal veins under pale light. The ground pulsed faintly, as though it resented my footsteps. Every instinct told me I had wandered into somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. Somewhere dangerous. Somewhere waiting. I turned slowly, heart pounding in my ears. Shapes shifted at the edges of my vision, maybe shadows, maybe the smoke playing tricks. My mind filled in threats that weren't there, fanged creatures, soldiers ready to strike, interstellar debt collectors. The silence was too thick, too expectant, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. "Okay," I whispered to no one, "new rule. No more shortcuts through gravity wells. I'll just take the scenic route like everyone else." Lesson learned. My voice sounded small, out of place, swallowed by the enormity of the forest. And then I saw her. She stood at the tree-line, tall and still, framed by the ghost light of the burning wreckage. At first glance, I thought she was human, skin pale under the strange glow, eyes dark with something I couldn't name. But then I saw the ears, long and elegantly pointed, catching the light in a way that made them impossible to ignore. She looked at me not with fear, not with curiosity, but with the unshaken calm of someone greeting a guest who had arrived late to dinner. For a moment, I froze, caught between awe and the sickening thought that I might be hallucinating from oxygen deprivation. Her gaze didn't waver. And then, finally, she spoke. Finally. The word carried more weight than the crash, more certainty than the prophecy of 1,000 worlds. It wasn't surprise, it was relief. As though my chaotic, unlucky plunge through space hadn't been a mistake at all. I opened my mouth, desperate to say something clever, something that would make sense of the insanity pressing down on me. All that came out was, "You were expecting me?" Her expression softened into the faintest smile, but she didn't answer. She just kept staring, as if waiting for me to remember something I had never known. And for the first time in my life, my usual fallback, humor, failed me. The silence between us was thick with meaning, the air electric with possibilities I couldn't yet grasp. The forest seemed to lean closer, listening. My pulse hammered. My thoughts scrambled. And yet, in that endless pause, one thing was undeniable: the danger I felt since falling into this world wasn't from the crash, or the shadows, or even the planet itself. Her eyes didn't blink, not once, and that was almost worse than if she had drawn a weapon. People blink. Machines blink. Even starship consoles blink when they're about to fail catastrophically. She simply stood there, perfectly still, with the firelight from my wreckage glinting against her ears like twin blades carved from moonlight. I swallowed, tried to adjust my jacket so I looked marginally less like a man who just lost a fistfight with gravity, and said the first thing that popped into my head. "So, do you live around here?" Her brow arched, and for a heartbeat I thought I'd committed some galactic-level faux pas, like asking royalty if they cleaned their own bathrooms. But then, impossibly, the corner of her lips twitched, the faintest suggestion of amusement. "You came later than expected," she said, voice calm, almost musical. "Traffic was a nightmare," I replied, glancing back at the smoking ruin of my shuttle. "Also, my GPS lied," said, recalculating about 20 times, "and then yeeted me into your planet. 5 stars, would not recommend." That smile flickered again, brief but unmistakable. It was terrifying. Not because it was hostile, but because it wasn't. She wasn't treating me like an intruder, or even an accident. No, she looked at me like someone looks at the last missing piece of a puzzle. And puzzles have answers. I, historically, do not. "I'm Elias," I blurted, because introductions seemed safer than just standing there waiting for the silence to kill me. "Kalen," she replied. The name rolled out of her mouth like it belonged to the wind itself. I tried to repeat it and nearly choked on the syllables, earning me a bemused tilt of her head. We stood there for a long, uncomfortable moment, with the forest listening in like a nosy neighbor. My shuttle popped once, releasing a hiss of steam. I flinched, Kalen didn't. Clearly she was more used to mysterious explosions in her backyard than I was. "You said, finally," I pressed, curiosity gnawing at me even as fear made my palms slick. "What's that supposed to mean?" Because usually when someone says that to me, it's about being late to pay rent. Kalen stepped closer. Her movements were deliberate, unhurried, as though she knew there was nowhere I could go and no reason to run. I backed up anyway, tripped on a root, and barely caught myself before making intimate acquaintance with the ground. She ignored my flailing and said, "You were expected. Not by me alone. By many." That didn't make me feel better. In fact, it made my stomach drop in the way it does when an elevator stops one floor too soon. Expected how? Like, prophecy expected, or, we got a pizza delivery and you showed up instead, expected. Kalen's eyes held mine. Prophecy. I laughed. Loudly. Too loudly. "Oh no. No, no, no. You've got the wrong guy. I'm not prophecy material. I can't even remember the password to my own ship's coffee machine. I once got locked out of my quarters for a week because I typed the code backward. Whatever you think I am, I promise you I'm not." Instead of looking offended, she studied me with a strange patience, like she was cataloging my every nervous gesture. I tried crossing my arms for dignity but ended up looking like I was hugging myself. Smooth. Real prophecy material. Kalen's gaze softened, though, and she said something that sent a chill through me. "The stars never err. You are here. That is enough." I opened my mouth to argue, but the forest interrupted. A low hum vibrated through the ground, faint at first, then growing like a swarm of insects inside the soil. The trees shivered. Their metallic bark pulsed with light, veins glowing faintly blue. I stumbled back toward Kalen despite myself. I said, gesturing wildly. Normal local wildlife, or are we about to be digested by the lawn? Kalen tilted her head, listening. It knows you. Fantastic. Always wanted to be recognized by alien shrubbery. She didn't laugh. Her expression was too solemn for that, though the twinkle in her eyes told me she appreciated the attempt. The glow faded as quickly as it began, leaving the forest still again. Kalen exhaled softly, as though confirming something only she understood. You will come with me, she said, as if it weren't a request. My first instinct was to argue. To insist I needed to salvage my ship, or contact command, or at least finish panicking in peace. But then I looked back at the shuttle, broken open like a crushed can, smoke trailing into the alien sky. There wasn't much left to salvage, except maybe some melted ration packs that now tasted like charred regret. Yeah, I muttered, rubbing the back of my neck. Not much of a home base anymore. So I followed her. We moved into the forest, where the air shimmered faintly, as if reality itself didn't quite hold steady here. The trees leaned closer, curious. Strange insects buzzed, their bodies crystalline, wings clicking like glass. My boots squeaked embarrassingly with every step, which would have ruined the mysterious ambience if Kalen hadn't looked entirely unfazed. As we walked, I tried to break the silence. So, Kalen. Just to clarify, you're not planning to sacrifice me to your moon gods, right? Her answer was so calm it was unnerving. Not tonight. I froze, my brain stuttering. She glanced back, and there it was again, the almost smile. You're joking, I said, half pleading. Am I? For the first time since I'd crashed, I laughed, not the panicked, forced kind, but the real, helpless kind that slips out when the world becomes too absurd to process. And though I didn't trust this planet, or this prophecy, or even my own sense of reality anymore, I realized something dangerous. The forest gave way to something that wasn't quite a city and wasn't quite alive, but somehow managed to be both. At first glance, I thought I'd stumbled into a grove of impossible trees, their trunks spiraling upward into towers that shimmered with veins of light. Then one of those towers sighed, yes, sighed, and I realized the buildings were breathing. My brain decided to shelve that revelation into the category labeled things Elias will emotionally process never. Kalen walked ahead of me with a confidence that made me feel like the awkward new kid on the first day of school. People, if I could even call them that, emerged from archways and route-like streets to watch us. Some had ears like hers, long and sharp enough to catch the light. Others had subtler differences, a hint of translucence to the skin, or eyes that glowed faintly as though galaxies had taken up residence inside. They didn't look at me with fear. They looked at me like I was an overdue library book. I cleared my throat, trying to sound casual. So, do I bow? Wave? Shake hands? Or is there like, a customary dance? Kalen glanced over her shoulder, perfectly calm. Walk. I walked. Badly. My boots squeaked against the living pavement, which rippled under my steps like I was stepping on the back of a very patient whale. The crowd murmured, some covering their mouths, others openly pointing. When one of them giggled, I decided to risk a joke. Don't mind me. Just your everyday intergalactic tourist, here to ruin the pavement with his footwear. More murmurs. A few startled laughs. Apparently sarcasm translated better than I expected. Encouraged, I tried again, if anyone's selling souvenirs, I'd love a magnet for my fridge. Assuming I ever see my fridge again. Kalen stopped abruptly. I almost collided with her, caught myself, and tried to look like I'd meant to trip that gracefully. She ignored my flailing and gestured to an enormous spire rising at the heart of the city. Its surface shifted like glass underwater, and symbols crawled across it in glowing script. The closer we got, the more I realized the spire wasn't just a building, it was aware. It pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat. I slowed. That thing's staring at me. It listens, Kalen corrected. Yeah, great, because being judged by sentient skyscrapers was exactly what I needed today. We entered through an archway that melted open at her approach. Inside, the air hummed with vibrations I felt in my teeth. Rows of crystalline tablets floated around us, spinning slowly, each one etched with patterns that shimmered like star maps. When I brushed against one, it sang, a pure note that vibrated through my bones. Kalen stepped to the center, lifted her hand, and the tablets shifted, forming a circle around us. These hold the prophecy, she said. I stared, wide-eyed, waiting for her to elaborate. She didn't. She just looked at me expectantly, as though I was supposed to recognize my own destiny like a man spotting his lost luggage at the airport. I pointed at the tablets. They're pretty. And noisy. Do I clap? Or are they going to start telling me my horoscope? Kalen's lips twitched again. They already are. The tablets glowed brighter, symbols rearranging, until one floated directly in front of me. Against all odds, I understood it, not in words, exactly, but in meaning, sliding into my head like a memory I'd forgotten. The traveler who arrives by mistake shall be the hinge upon which the world turns. I blinked, heart stuttering. Oh no. Nope. You've got the wrong hinge. I squeak under pressure. The tablet pulsed, almost reproachfully. Kalen's voice was steady, certain, you see it. Yeah, I see it, but I also see a lot of bad decisions in my past, and none of them prepared me for this. I'm not chosen one material. I'm more, chosen last in dodgeball material. The tablets didn't care. They kept spinning, rearranging, their voices rising in a harmonic hum that made the spire itself tremble. The whole chamber vibrated like a giant throat clearing itself. My teeth rattled. My knees wobbled. And still, Kalen only watched me, calm as gravity. I rubbed my temples, desperate for normalcy. Look, Kalen. I'm a pilot. I fly things. Badly, apparently. That's it. I'm not a prophecy. I'm not a savior. I'm just a guy who crashes where he shouldn't. Her eyes softened, and her words cut through the rising hum. That is precisely why. I froze, breath catching. For once, I couldn't joke. Couldn't deflect. Because in that moment, I saw how she looked at me, not with reverence, but with a kind of tired hope, as if she'd been carrying the weight of inevitability her whole life, and I was the first person to make it feel lighter. My mouth went dry. I wanted to tell her she was wrong. That she was mistaking me for someone braver, smarter, stronger. But the tablet's song rose higher, drowning out my excuses, until the chamber itself seemed to whisper one word, over and over, pulsing with light. Finally. I pressed my hands to my ears, stumbled back, and shouted, "Stop saying that. I don't even know what I'm supposed to have finally done." The song ended. Silence slammed down like a closing airlock. Kalen stepped close, so close I could see the faint glow in her eyes, like starlight trapped in glass. You arrived. That is enough. My laugh came out hollow. Lady, that's the worst qualification list I've ever heard. But deep down, beneath the humor, beneath the fear, something stirred. Something terrifying. Because a small part of me wondered if she was right. I didn't sleep that night. Mostly because the bed Kalen offered me wasn't a bed at all, it was some kind of mossy, glowing platform that adjusted itself every time I shifted. At first, I thought it was comfortable, like sinking into a cloud. Then the thing started humming in time with my heartbeat, and I realized I was basically being spooned by alien furniture. Try relaxing after that. Every time I closed my eyes, the memory of the crystalline tablets surged back. Their voices still clung to my bones, that single word, finally, ringing in the hollow places of my mind. I tried to convince myself it was all coincidence, some cultural misunderstanding. I wasn't a savior, I was just a terrible pilot with a knack for crash landings. But the harder I clung to that thought, the more the silence of the city seemed to argue with me. Morning, or what passed for it on this planet, arrived as a soft blue glow leaking through the living walls. Kaylin was already waiting when I stumbled out, hair a mess, dignity left somewhere back in the moss bed. She looked as composed as ever, like she hadn't been kept awake by existential dread. Maybe she'd never slept at all. For all I knew, people with ears like hers didn't even need to. "You look unwell," she said, eyeing me with that maddening calm. "Thanks," I muttered. Exactly the pep talk I needed. Her lips curved faintly. "Come. There is more you must see." I followed her through winding streets that seemed to rearrange themselves, routes and pathways shifting subtly as if the city didn't want to stay still for long. We passed inhabitants who paused to watch me, their whispers following like ghostly static. I tried to ignore them by cracking jokes under my breath. "Don't stare too hard," I muttered. "He's just a regular idiot in borrowed socks." Kaylin glanced sideways. "Borrowed socks?" "Yeah. Took them from my bunkmate before the crash. He's probably still mad about it. Imagine explaining that to him if I ever get back. Sorry, couldn't return your socks, got recruited into prophecy duty." She didn't laugh, but her shoulders shook just slightly. I counted that as a win. We left the city and climbed a ridge overlooking the horizon. That was when I saw it, the sky, torn open. Not wide, not yet, but enough to see the edges of something wrong. It was as though a claw had raked through reality itself, leaving a wound that bled shifting light. Stars flickered near it, dimming and brightening in rhythms that made no sense. Space wasn't supposed to ripple like water. And yet, there it was, warping everything around it. My throat tightened. Okay. That's not normal. Kaylin's gaze stayed fixed on the rift. It grows. Slowly now, but faster with each cycle. Cycle. The turning of our twin moons. Each time they cross the rift's path, it widens. I squinted. "So you're telling me your planet's about to be eaten by cosmic scissors?" "Not eaten," she corrected. "Unmade." "Wow, much better. Thanks for clarifying." The humor tumbled out of me because the alternative was screaming. I tore my eyes away from the impossible sky and turned on her. "And you think I'm supposed to fix that?" "Me? I once lost a ship manual in the toilet. I am not rift repair material." She didn't flinch, didn't argue. She just looked at me with that unbearable steadiness. "You were not chosen for what you are. You were chosen for what you are not." That stopped me cold. "What I'm not?" Kaylin nodded. "The prophecy speaks of one who carries no ties, no destiny, no anchor. A mistake, yet the necessary mistake." I threw my hands up. "So the universe basically said, let's save the world with the clumsiest man alive." Fantastic. Perfect plan. Nothing could go wrong. For the first time, Kaylin actually laughed. It was quiet, melodic, but undeniably real. I blinked, startled, and felt a stupid rush of triumph. She laughed at my joke. Score one for humanity. Her smile faded, though, as her eyes returned to the sky. "You think yourself unworthy. That is why you are." I rubbed my face, groaning. "You have no idea how bad I am at pep talks. Usually I'm the one being told not to ruin everything, not the other way around." We stood there in silence for a long time, the rift humming faintly across the heavens. My chest tightened with a strange mix of dread and inevitability. I wanted to run, to hide, to find some way off this planet. But I couldn't shake the feeling that even if I escaped, the rift would follow me. Maybe it already had. Finally, I muttered, if the stars really wanted me here, they should have given me a manual. Or at least a wrench. Kalen's voice softened, almost kind. You will learn. Great, I sighed. Just promise me when I mess this up, you'll say something nice at my funeral. Like, Elias was, punctual. She tilted her head, ears catching the alien wind. You were not punctual. Okay, fine. Elias wore borrowed socks. This time, she didn't laugh, but her smile lingered. And somehow, standing there beneath a broken sky, I felt the tiniest spark of something I hadn't expected. Not confidence. Not courage. Just the unsettling suspicion that maybe, just maybe, I'd already started to believe her. The ground beneath us trembled as though the planet itself had caught a cough. Dust lifted in lazy spirals around my boots, and the air shivered with static that made the hairs on my arms stand up. Kalen didn't even blink, just stood watching the distant tear in the sky as though it were nothing more than bad weather. Meanwhile, I was wondering how many years of therapy it would take to process the fact that I could see space breaking. Please tell me that's just your version of a thunderstorm, I said, my voice higher than usual. Kalen shook her head. The rift feeds. Feeds? I repeated, tightening my grip on the strap of my half-burned flight jacket. On what? Don't say planets. Or people. Or, actually, don't say anything that could include me. Her eyes didn't leave the shimmering wound in the heavens. On uncertainty. On what is untethered. I pointed at my chest. Well, that explains why it's staring at me like I'm the buffet. The tremor faded, leaving silence behind. Silence so thick I could hear my own pulse. I forced myself to take a breath, tried to ground myself in something normal. Unfortunately, normal here meant glowing moss, whispering trees, and a woman who spoke about destiny like she was reading a grocery list. Kalen finally turned to me, her face still that unreadable calm. The prophecy says the one who arrives by mistake will close what cannot be closed. I barked out a laugh, too sharp. Fantastic. I'm the universe's duct tape. Do you people realize duct tape is 90% wishful thinking? Her gaze softened slightly, which almost annoyed me more than if she'd argued. I hated that her calmness made me feel like a tantruming child. You doubt yourself, she said. I doubt everything, I snapped. That's my brand. You're talking about cosmic tears and feeding on uncertainty like that's just Tuesday for you. I can't even decide if I should grow a mustache. Don't hang the fate of your world on me. The words echoed too loudly, bouncing off the ridge, disappearing into the vastness of sky. Kalen's silence pressed against me, and I wished she'd just yell back, or at least roll her eyes. Instead, she simply gestured for me to follow. We descended the ridge into a valley that looked like a scar across the land. The soil was black, cracked, glowing faintly at the seams as though something beneath it was alive. My boots squelched unpleasantly, like stepping in cosmic jelly. I grimaced, but Kalen walked ahead without hesitation. Don't suppose you've got protective gear for this? I asked. Her ears twitched. You are protected. By what, optimism? The ground pulsed under my feet in response, and I yelped, hopping awkwardly to one side. Kalen didn't laugh, but I swore the corner of her mouth quirked. We reached the center of the valley, where jagged stones jutted up in a circle. Between them, a device floated, if you could call it a device. It was part crystal, part machine, part something that looked disturbingly like bone. Wires and veins twisted together, pulsing in rhythm with the glow of the earth. Kalen bowed her head slightly. The anchor. I squinted at it. That's not an anchor. Anchors are supposed to be heavy metal things you throw into water. That's... I don't even know what that is. A chandelier built by a lunatic? It holds the rift at bay, she said. But its strength fades. I circled the thing cautiously, hands shoved in my jacket pockets to hide how badly they were shaking. Every time I got close, the anchor hummed, the same way the prophecy tablets had hummed in the spire. My teeth buzzed, and a warmth spread through my chest. Ah. Kalen. It's humming at me. It recognizes you. Yeah, well, I don't recognize it. We definitely didn't go to school together. The glow flared brighter, pulsing harder, and suddenly I wasn't joking anymore. A vision slammed into me, flashes of stars bending, ships torn apart, people screaming into silence. My knees buckled. I hit the ground with a grunt, clutching my head. Kalen was beside me in an instant, her hand steadying my shoulders. What did you see? Nothing good, I croaked. Whole lot of screaming. 0 vacation packages. She helped me sit up, her expression as calm as always, but there was a new sharpness in her eyes. The anchor responds only to what the rift fears. And the rift fears you. I stared at her, throat dry. Lady, that's the worst pep talk I've ever heard. Her lips twitched again, and to my shock, she actually chuckled. The sound was low, warm, and completely at odds with the apocalyptic vision still burning behind my eyes. Despite myself, I laughed too, shakily. So let me get this straight. I'm being hunted by a hole in space that eats uncertainty, and the only thing keeping it from swallowing us all is this glow-stick chandelier that apparently thinks I'm scary. Yes. I leaned back on my hands, staring at the pulsating device, then up at the rift tearing the sky apart. Well. At least the job title's original. Elias Moran, Professional Rift Repellent. Has a nice ring to it. Kalen tilted her head, studying me. You jest, yet you stay. I looked at her, then at the broken sky again, and let out a long sigh. Yeah. Guess running's never really been my style. It wasn't true. Running had always been my style. But for the first time, I wondered if maybe I'd finally crashed into one place I couldn't escape. And worse still, a very small, very reckless part of me didn't want to. The journey began at dawn, if you could call it dawn, since the sun here didn't rise so much as unravel across the sky like molten silk being spilled. Kalen moved as if she had memorized every crooked path, every shifting stone, while I trudged after her, trying not to step on anything that hummed, blinked, or whispered my name. The forest seemed alive in a way that went beyond metaphor, and I wasn't sure if it was welcoming me or plotting my digestion. You could have warned me your moss bites, I muttered after yanking my boot free from a patch of green fuzz that had snapped shut like a Venus flytrap. Kalen glanced back, completely unfazed. It sensed hesitation. Great. So now even the ground's judging me. Despite my complaints, the alien world was undeniably mesmerizing. We crossed a plain where sand vibrated in steady pulses, like the planet's heartbeat echoing beneath the surface. Above us, twin moons hung in precarious balance, their orbits so close I swore they whispered to each other. At one point, Kalen stopped to touch a jagged stone jutting from the earth, and the thing lit up, displaying holographic patterns that swirled like galaxies. What is it? I asked, breathless. A memory, she said. Of what? Everything. I decided not to touch it. Knowing my luck, I'd accidentally download the trauma of an entire civilization and spend the rest of the trip sobbing. By midday, we reached the edge of an ocean. Except it wasn't an ocean in the Earth sense, no waves, no salt smell, no seagulls trying to steal your sandwich. This sea shimmered with colors that didn't exist in my vocabulary, a surface that shifted between liquid and light. It rippled like glass when Kalen stepped onto it, her feet supported as though the ocean itself approved of her. I stopped at the shore, blinking. You're walking on water. She looked back at me, serene. So can you. I laughed nervously. Sure, yeah, and I can also juggle chainsaws blindfolded. Doesn't mean I'm gonna try. But she kept staring at me, patient as always, so I sighed, peeled off one boot, and poked my toe against the glowing surface. To my shock, it held. Carefully, I set my foot down. Then the other. I was standing on the ocean. Ha! I shouted. Take that, physics. You're not the boss of me anymore. The sea promptly rippled in protest, wobbling under my weight. I flailed, nearly toppled, and only barely caught myself. Kaylin's lips twitched. Not funny, I grumbled, arms windmilling. I almost invented drowning in colors. She led me across the surface, steady as if she'd done this her whole life. I stumbled after her, still marveling at the impossible sensation beneath my feet. Somewhere in the distance, enormous shapes moved beneath the glowing waves, shadows that were too big, too strange to name. One rose just enough for me to glimpse an eye the size of my shuttle's cockpit, glimmering with curiosity before it sank again. I whispered, your ocean has tenants. They will not harm us, Kaylin replied. Are you sure? They know you are expected. I groaned. Of course they do. Everybody knows I'm expected. I wish someone had told me. When we finally reached the opposite shore, my legs felt like jelly, but the ground was solid again, well, solid-ish. The soil here glowed faintly in the darkening light, casting everything in shades of blue and violet. I collapsed onto a rock that might have been alive and pulled out what was left of my ration bar. It tasted like burnt plastic and sadness. Kaylin sat beside me, watching the twin moons creep toward each other in the sky. When they cross, the rift will widen again, she said quietly. I chewed miserably. So, no pressure, huh? You make light of it. It's either that or scream into the moss. Her head tilted slightly, ears catching the alien breeze. For the first time, I saw something crack in her composure. Not fear, never fear, but weariness. As though she'd been carrying this knowledge alone for far too long. Kaylin, I said softly, do you actually believe this prophecy stuff? Or are you just really committed to trolling the lost pilot who crash-landed in your backyard? She met my gaze, steady, unflinching. I have waited since I could remember. My mother waited before me. Her mother before her. The words have carried through centuries, binding us to patience. And now you are here. I swallowed hard, the ration bar turning to ash in my mouth. For once, I didn't have a joke ready. I just stared at the moons colliding in their slow, inevitable dance, and wondered what kind of idiot destiny had chosen me to be. Eventually, I sighed. You know, on Earth we had fortune cookies. Little slips of paper that said vague things like, your journey begins soon. But at least those came with fried noodles. You guys just skipped straight to the cosmic doom prophecy. Her lips curved faintly again, and I clung to that tiny smile like it was proof I wasn't completely failing. Night settled, if you could call it that, the sky a whirl of stars, the rift gleaming like an infected wound in the distance. I lay back on the glowing soil, staring upward, and whispered to no one in particular. Finally. Right. We'll see about that. I woke to the sound of the ground humming beneath me, which was not the most reassuring alarm clock. My first instinct was to smack at my wrist console, thinking it had finally developed a vibration function, only to realize the planet was doing it. The glowing soil pulsed like a heartbeat, and for a moment I wondered if I'd accidentally fallen asleep on some enormous creature's chest. That would have been awkward. Kaylin was already standing, as usual, perfectly composed. I was beginning to suspect she didn't actually sleep. Maybe she recharged in moonlight like a solar panel. The rift stirs, she said quietly, her gaze fixed on the horizon where the twin moons hovered dangerously close, their orbits shimmering with threads of light. I rubbed at my eyes. You know, back home, when the ground shakes, we call it an earthquake. Here, it's like the universe clearing its throat. She gave me that look again, the one that made me feel like a child armed with sarcasm in the face of someone who'd already seen centuries pass. It will not wait much longer. Yeah, well, neither will my stomach. I fished in my pocket, produced the last of my rations, and held it up like a prize. One final bar of compressed soy protein. Fit for kings, or at least for desperate pilots. Want to split it? She regarded the sad, foil-wrapped rectangle as though it were a holy relic. Is it edible? I peeled back the wrapper. The thing was gray and crumbly, smelling faintly like cardboard left in the rain. Technically. She shook her head, lips twitching. Keep your treasure. I will endure. So I chewed half-heartedly on the ration, wondering if this was the last taste of Earth I'd ever have. The thought almost made me nostalgic for real food, pizza, fries, the questionable hot dogs at orbital fueling stations. Funny how facing cosmic annihilation makes you crave grease and ketchup. We moved on as the day stretched, the landscape growing stranger the closer we came to the rift. The trees lost their leaves, then their branches, until only skeletal trunks stood, glowing faintly from within like lanterns filled with captured starlight. The air shimmered too, bending the light so that Kaylin sometimes looked doubled, like the world wasn't sure how many of her there should be. At one point, the distortion thickened until I swore I was walking beside two Kaylins, both equally unimpressed with my stumbling. Great, I muttered, squinting. Twins. Twice the disappointment in me for the price of one. Only one of them smirked, which was somehow worse. When we finally crested a ridge, the view stole whatever was left of my sarcasm. The rift yawned across the sky, no longer a crack but a gaping wound. Stars bled into it, bending like liquid light being swallowed. It roared without sound, a vibration that buzzed in my teeth and bones. I staggered back, clutching my chest. Kaylin's hand steadied me. Do you feel it? Yes, I croaked. Like sticking a fork in a power outlet. And I've actually done that, so I know what I'm talking about. We descended toward the base of the wound, where the land itself had split open. And there, suspended in the middle of a jagged crater, hung another one of those crystalline machines, larger than the anchor we'd seen before, pulsing like it was alive. This one, though, was cracked down the center, leaking light like blood. The core, Kaylin whispered. It cannot hold much longer. I stared at it, resisting the urge to back away. Please tell me you've got a manual. Or at least an on-off switch. Her expression didn't change, but I could tell she wanted to laugh. You are the manual. Figures. I raked my hands through my hair. You guys should really invest in backups. Or maybe universal tech support. Hi, yes, I'm Elias Moran, and my ancient prophecy device is leaking cosmic horror again. But the core pulsed harder, reacting to my presence, and before I could make another joke, a beam of light shot out, striking me square in the chest. My breath caught, heat searing through me. Images cascaded behind my eyes, Kaylin's ancestors, countless generations waiting, each whispering the same words, he will arrive by mistake. He will close what cannot be closed. I dropped to my knees, gasping, clutching at the air. Kaylin was beside me instantly, her hands steadying my face. What do you see? Everything, I choked out. And nothing I want. I saw worlds consumed, but also glimpses of what could be, the rift sealed, stars shining free again, Kaylin standing not in despair but in peace. And somehow, absurdly, I saw myself there too, still making dumb jokes, but alive. When the vision ended, I collapsed forward, panting. Kaylin didn't let go. Her calm eyes searched mine, and for once I saw something more than patience, fear, and hope tangled together. It has chosen, she murmured. Yeah, I wheezed, lying flat on the glowing soil. Lucky me. Silence hung heavy between us, filled only by the hum of the core and the endless roar of the rift above. Finally, I lifted a shaky hand and pointed upward. So, what's step 2? Because step 1 really sucked. Kaylin's lips curved just slightly. Step 2 is survival. I groaned. Always the hard part. And as the ground trembled again, the moons beginning to cross in their deadly dance, I realized we were running out of steps entirely. The core's light was no longer steady, it convulsed like a failing heart, each pulse sending shockwaves through the crater. The rift above had widened into a hungry mouth, pulling at the stars like threads being unraveled from a great cosmic tapestry. I stood at the edge, hands trembling, chest still aching from the vision. For once, I didn't try to joke. For once, I knew silence was the only answer I had. Kaylin stepped beside me, calm even in the chaos. It waits for you. That's comforting, I muttered. Nothing like a dying machine and an apocalyptic hole in the sky rolling out the red carpet. But still, I moved closer, the heat of the fractured crystal baking my skin. I thought about all the times I'd screwed up before this, missed landings, botched assignments, one failed relationship after another. And now, apparently, the universe thought I was worth gambling its survival on. Go figure. The core spoke again, not in words, but in sensation. It filled my head with what needed to be done. A pattern, a sequence, something only I could complete. I didn't understand how or why, but I could feel it, the pilot's mind was the missing piece. Navigation, orientation, the stubbornness to stay on course even when everything screamed otherwise. My life of clumsy errors had somehow prepared me for this absurd moment. Kaylin, I said, forcing a grin though my throat was dry, if I explode, please tell people I went out heroically. Not like tripping on a rock or something. Her eyes softened. You will not explode. That's weirdly specific. Makes me think exploding is actually an option. I placed my hands on the cracked core. It burned, but not enough to push me back. The visions returned, sharper this time, guiding me. Close the fracture, align the moons, seal the wound. Simple on paper. In reality, my veins felt like liquid fire as I focused everything I was into holding the pattern together. Kaylin's voice anchored me. She began speaking in her language, words I didn't understand but felt resonate. Her presence steadied the chaos, pulling me back when I almost slipped under. For the first time since crashing here, I realized I wasn't alone. The moons above collided in their great crossing, light searing the sky. The rift shrieked, tearing wider, and then, through me, through the core, the energy snapped into alignment. The fracture slammed shut like a wound stitched by invisible hands. The roar cut off. Silence fell, so complete it rang in my ears. When I finally let go, I collapsed, smoke curling from my fingertips. My whole body shook, but the sky above was whole again, the stars free, the moons drifting apart in exhausted relief. Kaylin caught me before I hit the ground fully, lowering me gently. Her touch was steady, cool against my overheated skin. It is done, she whispered. I managed a laugh, hoarse and broken. Told you. Totally the prophecy guy. No big deal. Just saved your world. Probably sprained something important in the process, but hey. Her smile, small but radiant, made every ache worth it. The waiting is over. We stayed there as the sky healed, and for the first time I realized how much I'd changed. Back on Earth, I was always running, from responsibility, from expectations, from myself. Here, I couldn't run. Here, I'd had to stop, face the impossible, and do it anyway. Not because I believed in destiny, but because someone finally looked at me like I was capable of more than failure. When the glow of the core finally dimmed, leaving behind only a crystalline husk, I sat up slowly. So, what now? Do I get a medal? A parade? Maybe a sandwich? Kaylin tilted her head. You may stay. Or you may go. The path is yours. I blinked at her. The words hit harder than the prophecy ever had. For the first time, no one was telling me what I had to do. No flight plan, no mission orders, no destiny carved in stone. Just choice. I thought of Earth, of the cramped shuttle hangars and the endless grind of meaningless jobs. And then I looked at her, this strange, patient woman with ears like a whisper of myth and eyes that had seen me in a way no one else had. Staying sounds good, I said finally, smiling. Though, fair warning, I'll keep making terrible jokes. She didn't flinch. Then perhaps I will learn to laugh. And just like that, the weight of centuries lifted. The prophecy was fulfilled, but it hadn't trapped me, it had freed me. The rift was gone, the sky was whole, and for once in my life, so was I. As we left the crater together, I glanced back one last time. The husk of the core lay quiet, no longer bleeding light, but I swore I heard a faint whisper carried on the breeze. Not words, exactly, just a feeling. Finally. I grinned. Yeah. Finally.